They say love fades, but mine didn't fade. It was dismissed, pushed aside like clutter, packed away like a forgotten sweater in a drawer someone no longer bothers to open. When I first met Mark, I believed he was everything I ever wanted. Tall, charming, confident. He held doors open, remembered my favorite coffee order, and once drove 2 hours just to surprise me with flowers. That was before now. Now I could disappear into the wallpaper and he'd probably compliment the paint. "Clara, did you burn this again?" He pushed his plate back with that signature sigh, not loud, just loud enough to slice through the room. "No, the chicken just caramelized a bit more than usual." "You mean it's dry?" He smiled at his phone, not at me. I stood, silently twisting the edge of my apron between my fingers. He didn't look up that night. I stared at the ceiling fan blades rotating above me while he snored softly beside me. This had become routine. A marriage filled with cold dinners, colder silences, and comments that cut deep, yet were delivered with a smile. He never yelled. He didn't need to. He had mastered the art of quiet cruelty. When we first married, gave up my small boutique design business, he said we needed to streamline the household, and it made more sense for one of us to focus. I believed him. I always believed him. I donated my sketchbooks, packed away my sewing machine, and tried desperately to become the version of a wife he could brag about. But the truth is, he never bragged. He tolerated. At a recent company dinner, one of Mark's colleagues, a kind-faced woman named Rachel, smiled at me and asked, "And what do you do, Clara?" Before I could answer, Mark chuckled and said, "Oh, she keeps the house alive. Pinterest queen. Right, Clara?" Everyone laughed. I did too, but inside something cracked. Because I hadn't logged into Pinterest in months. I hadn't felt alive. In even longer. That night, while Mark slept soundly beside me, I dug through our storage closet. Beneath boxes labeled Christmas and old towels, I found it, my old sketchbook, covered in dust. A little water damaged, but mine. I flipped through the page's crude designs, messy pen lines, fabric swatches taped to corners, and I cried. Not because I missed the work, but because I missed me. The next morning, Mark didn't notice the puffiness in my eyes. He was too busy scolding me about leaving the kettle on too long. "You space out too much, Clara. You've got to focus more. Wives have one job: keep the small things under control." I smiled faintly and nodded, but inside something shifted. That afternoon, I sat alone at a small corner cafe near our apartment, not because I wanted coffee, but because I needed air that didn't carry his voice. That's when she walked in, tall, glowing, effortlessly bold. She wore a yellow pantsuit that made the whole room look dim. She sat next to me and smiled. "Sorry, no seats left. Hope you don't mind." Shook my head, not at all. She noticed my sketchbook. "Did you draw?" I hesitated sometimes. She leaned forward, her eyes lighting up. "I'm Amira. I run a boutique agency for fashion creatives. Mind if I peek?" I panicked, then nodded. She flipped through the pages like they were poetry. "Wow," she said. "You've got something? Ever done commercial design?" I laughed. "No, I used to, but life got in the way." She tilted her head. "Well, life's always in the way. That's the fun part." We talked for an hour. She asked questions that didn't make me feel stupid. She saw me, the way Mark hadn't in years. Before she left, she handed me her card. "Email me, even if it's just to talk ideas. You're not as far off as you think." And with that, she disappeared into the street, a beam of sunlight bouncing off her heels. That night, Mark asked where I'd been. I told him. I met someone who liked my drawings. He didn't even glance up from his tablet. Just don't get too distracted." Dinner's burning again, but this time I didn't apologize. I just watched the chicken roast, feeling something unfamiliar begin to boil inside me. It wasn't anger, it was clarity. It had been years since anyone looked at me the way Amira did, not with pity, not with polite disinterest, but with genuine curiosity. Like I mattered not as someone's wife, but as someone That evening, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, holding Amira's business card like it was a lifeline. Her words echoed. "You're not as far off as you think. Email me, even if it's just to talk ideas." It sounded so small, but to me it was air after drowning. The next morning, after Mark left for work, I stared at a blank email window for almost an hour. What do I say? How do I sound? Not desperate. Finally, I typed, "Hi, Amira, thank you again for your kind words. I'm not sure what I'm capable of yet, but I'd love to learn." Clara hit send. Then I sat on the kitchen floor and waited like it was a job interview. I didn't realize I dozed off until I heard my phone ping. Subject: "You've already got it. Clara, I loved your sketches. I don't need polished, I need real. Come to the studio tomorrow. Bring your sketchbook and yourself. Coffee's on me." Amiri covered my mouth to keep from screaming. I hadn't felt this nervous since my wedding day. But this time, it wasn't about being chosen. It was about choosing myself. Amira's studio sat inside an old building covered in murals. The lobby smelled like coffee and paint. Inside was organized chaos. Bolts of fabric, design boards, models rehearsing for fittings. She waved me over, her smile loud and warm. "I've got a small freelance campaign. It's a scarf line for a lifestyle. Influencer. Think you can design 3 original looks?" I blinked. Me. She laughed. "Yes, Clara. Why does that sound so impossible to you?" I swallowed. "I've never been taken seriously. Not in this way." She softened. "Then let this be the first time." Over the next few days, I worked from the studio quietly, sketching while the world buzzed around me. I tried new ideas, new fabrics, and for the first time in years, I liked my reflection, not because I looked prettier, but because I looked alive when I got home. Mark was scrolling on the couch. "Where were you?" I told him calmly, confidently. He chuckled, still chasing that sewing hobby. I wanted to scream, to tell him how good it felt to be seen for something more than clean floors and overcooked chicken. But I de-egged and single quotes because arguing with Mark, it's like shouting into a canyon. It only came back to hurt. That night, I finished my designs and sent them to Amira. She replied within an hour. "Clara, these are magic. Can we use your look in our mock ad for the brand pitch? It's the way you styled that scarf. It's fresh, authentic. Exactly what we want. I'll send the release form tomorrow. Also, I want to offer you a part-time contract." I stared at the screen for so long my coffee went cold. The next day, Amira arranged a quick shoot, nothing fancy. Just her photographer snapping a few shots of me and my design. I posed awkwardly, unsure of where to look. "You're a natural," the photographer said. "You've got a story in your eyes." I laughed nervously. He wasn't wrong. That weekend, I signed the freelance contract. Small pay, flexible hours, but it felt bigger than any paycheck. It felt like permission, not from them, from me. Mark barely asked about where I was anymore. He assumed I was just wasting time at a crafting circle or sipping overpriced lattes with bored housewives. He didn't notice the sparkle returning to my voice. He didn't notice couch stay. I had stopped asking for his opinion. And that silence, it was louder than ever. One night, as I folded laundry, he looked up from his phone. "You?" "No, I told Chris today you've been making scarves again." "Oh yeah. He said his cousin does that on Etsy and makes like $50 a month. Cute hobby." I nodded, but inside I smiled. Because the real numbers were coming and he had no idea what was about to hit him. I stopped expecting birthday surprises years ago, but never thought he'd forget it completely. The morning started like any other. I made breakfast, ironed his shirt, and smiled through the silence. Mark sat scrolling through his emails. Sipping his coffee, he didn't glance up once. No happy birthday. No card, not even a distracted, "Did you want to do something tonight?" Just emails. And chewing. At first I told myself maybe he was planning something. Maybe there'd be flowers waiting at the door. Or a reservation at that rooftop restaurant I always admired but never visited. But as the day went on, It became painfully clear he didn't remember. Around noon, I got a call. "Happy birthday, woman of the hour." 'Twas Amira. I smiled. Relieved. Someone remembered. She insisted I come to the studio. "I won't take no for an answer," she said. "But I've got cupcakes, wine, and something to show you." I hesitated. Mark would be home around 6. But what was I waiting for? Man who couldn't even remember the day I was born. Amira's studio was buzzing. Streamers hung from the wall. And a little sign read, "Clara DAY, celebrating a star in bloom." I choked up. There were only 6 people in the room. Amira, a photographer, a few designers, and one model. But they clapped when I walked in. They sang. They hugged me. They passed around cheap wine like it was champagne. It felt like home. Amira pulled me aside. "Look," she said, unlocking her tablet. She showed me a photo mock-up, a Billboard ad. My scarf, my design, my face, soft, strong, glowing in golden light. The test run had gone viral online. A luxury lifestyle brand was considering picking it up for a downtown launch. My heart raced. "They want you to be the face," Amira said. "It's authentic, homegrown, not just another anonymous model." I blinked. "Me?" She nodded. "You." I wanted to cry, but not from sadness, from shock, from remembering a version of myself thought had died years ago. I stayed at the studio until 9 p.m. When I got home, the lights were off. Mark was asleep. There was no gift, no apology, no cake. Only a sticky note on the fridge that said, "Didn't know where you were. Left some leftover pizza in the oven." That night, I didn't cry. I simply walked to the mirror, wiped off my makeup, and whispered to my reflection, "Don't ever let him shrink you again." The next morning, I wore one of my scarves to the grocery store, the one from the photo shoot. A teenage girl tapped me on the shoulder. "Sorry, are you the woman from the Billboard preview? The one on Instagram?" I froze. She pulled out her phone, showed me the image. I smiled. "I guess I am." Her eyes lit up. "You're so cool." No one had ever said that to me before. That afternoon, I signed the brand partnership paperwork. 3 designs, 3 campaigns, 1 face. Mine. Mark still didn't ask about my birthday. Didn't notice the paperwork on the kitchen table. Didn't recognize the slow, unstoppable storm building inside me. But he would, very soon. It was a Tuesday. Nothing special on the calendar, but for me, would become the night I finally said goodbye. Even though I was still standing right in front of him, I made dinner out of habit. Spaghetti and meatballs, one of the few dishes he didn't criticize. I even set the table, lit a small candle, and folded the napkins into little swans. The way I used to back when I still hoped he'd notice the details. But when Mark walked in, he didn't look at the table. He looked at his phone. He barely said hello, just walked straight past me. Smettering smells better than yesterday. I stood there for a moment, staring at the back of the man I once thought was my forever. And I felt nothing, not hurt, not angry, just a quiet, chilling certainty that I didn't belong here anymore. We ate in silence. He twirled his spaghetti. I watched the candle flicker. I cleared my throat. I got the brand contract. He didn't. Look up. I tried again. The scarf line. The mock-up went viral. They want to use my image for the campaign. This time he did look at me, but not with pride, with confusion. "Wait, your face? For an ad?" I nodded. They said it felt real. That I connect with the audience. Mark set his fork down. "Clara, this isn't a game. You're playing with people's time and money now." I blinked. "It's not a game. It's my job." He laughed, not loudly. It's just enough to cut through me. "Clara, listen to yourself. You've been drawing scarves for a month, and now you think you're a brand." I said nothing. "Do you even know how to manage a contract? A public image? This isn't Pinterest, okay? It's not for housewives." There it was again, that word, housewives. Like it was a sickness. Like it was all I'd ever be. I looked at him, truly looked. The man who once told me I was the calm in his chaos. Now, he couldn't even look me in the eye without seeing inconvenience. I pushed my chair back. I'm not asking for your permission. Mark, I'm telling you this is happening, with or without your support. His jaw tensed. That what? This is now a feminist phase. I tilted my head. No, it's a Clara phase. He rolled his eyes, and then the final straw. The poison sentence. Maybe I married you too early. You're just not wife material. I didn't flinch. I simply stood up, walked to the sink, and let the water run. He kept talking, ranting about how I was being ungrateful and dramatic. But his voice was background noise because my soul had already walked away that night. After he fell asleep, like he always did without asking if I was okay, I packed a bag, just a small one, a few outfits. My sketchbook, the scarf I wore. In the Billboard photo and Amira's address, I left a note on the fridge. It didn't say much, just enough. You didn't notice me when I was beside you. Let's see if you notice when I'm gone. Clara, I didn't cry when I shut the door behind me. I didn't look back. I didn't even check if he was waking up, because that version of me, the one who begged for scraps of affection, was gone. Amira didn't ask many questions. When I showed up at her doorstep the next morning, she opened the door, saw my suitcase, and nodded once. Took you long enough, she said, pulling me into a hug. I stayed in her guest room for a week. We worked. We created. We laughed. She never pushed. She just gave me space to remember who I was, and slowly, I did. One afternoon, we walked past a building downtown. They were prepping for a massive billboard install. Amira smiled and nudged me. They chose yours. She whispered. I looked up at the scaffolding, heart pounding. The team unrolled the banner slowly, and there I was, me, wrapped in one of my own designs. Eyes soft but strong. Chin lifted, like I had just remembered my worth and dared the world to challenge it. The tagline read, "She designed her power, now she wears it." I stood there frozen. A tear slipped down my cheek, not from pain, but from release. That woman on the banner, she wasn't some model. She was me. The me who once shrank in kitchens and cried in bathrooms. The me who stopped apologizing. The me who left. Back at the studio, my phone buzzed. 17 missed calls. Mark, then a message. Is this a joke? You're on a billboard. What is going on? Call me. I turned off my phone because, for the first time, I didn't owe him an explanation. My life wasn't his to control anymore. The first time I saw strangers take selfies with my billboard. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I was standing across the street, wrapped in my own scarf, sunglasses on, hair pulled back, and there they were, 3 women. Pointing up, giggling. One of them said, "She looks like someone who built her life back from ashes." She had no idea how right she was. When I returned to Amira's studio, the place was electric. Designers buzzed, interns typed furiously, and there were sticky notes everywhere with words like influencer deal and retail pitch. Amira waved me over. "You've got a meeting at 3? Someone big? Who?" She smirked. "Let's just say your life is about to split into 2 parts, before the billboard and after it." At 3 p.m., I stepped into a conference room where a woman in a sharp navy suit greeted me with a firm handshake. "Clara, I'm Renee, VP of Brand Strategy at Thorn & Co. Thorn & Co., the luxury label that didn't just make fashion. They made statements. "We saw your scarf campaign," she said. "It's authentic, grounded, relatable. And the story. The fact that you're not a model, but a creator? That's our dream." I sat still, unsure what to say. She continued, "We'd like to collaborate." A limited line. "Kay, we fund, you design, you front the campaign. You'll have full creative say." Blinked. Me. "Lead a fashion line." She leaned in. "You're not just a face anymore. You're a brand." That evening, as the sun melted into the skyline, I found myself alone in Amira's guest room, sketchbook on my lap, laptop open to a contract I didn't fully understand yet, and a part of me wanted to call Mark and say, "Look what you walked away from. Look who you told wasn't wife material." But I didn't, because this wasn't about revenge. Anymore, this was about rebirth. The next day, finally did something bold. I posted on social media something I hadn't done in over a year. Just one photo, the Billboard captioned, "She almost forgot who she was." But then she built something so powerful, even she had to look up. No hashtags, no tags. No names. By nightfall, it had over 30,000 shares. Mark called again. This time, I answered. "Clara," he snapped. "What are you doing? This is embarrassing." I said nothing. He went on, "You're being dramatic." "You left a note." "A note, Clara." Still, I said nothing. I mean, what do you want me to do? Apologize. Okay, I'm sorry, all right? But don't throw your life away over some silly career. Fantasy. You're not built for this. And that's when I finally spoke. "No, Mark, I'm not throwing my life away. I'm finally living it." He scoffed. "This won't last. You'll burn out." "And then what? You'll come crawling back." I smiled. "No, Mark. If I burn, I'll light up the sky." And I hung up. The following week, I signed the contract. My own collection, scarred and stunning. Scarves with raw, zeked patterns symbolizing everything I'd been through. Fabrics stitched with quotes from journal pages. I used to hide. Each piece told a story. Each piece was a scar I no longer felt ashamed of. My line launched online, and within 3 hours it sold out. Amira cried. I did too, but not because I was scared anymore. This time was because I believed in the woman staring back from the mirror. Weeks passed. I moved into a small apartment of my own, modest, sunny, with a corner for my sketches and a view of the billboard still hanging across town. Some nights, sat with tea and stared at it, not for vanity, but as a reminder that no matter how deeply someone tries to bury you, if you're rooted in your truth, you bloom anyway. One night, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Mark. He looked tired, paler, smaller somehow. "Can we talk?" he asked. I stepped aside. He walked in, looked around the apartment. "This is you now." I nodded. "This is me." He sat on the edge of my couch, fidgeted. "I saw your billboard," he finally said. "Everyone at the firm is talking about it. They're calling you a phoenix." I smiled faintly. "Not bad for someone who wasn't wife material, huh?" He winced. "Clara, I didn't mean it like that." "But you did, Mark, and that's okay." He looked confused. "You're not mad?" "No," I said softly. "I'm not mad. Anymore. I'm free." He nodded. I don't know what to say." "Then don't," I said. "Just leave me in peace." He stood, silent. As he turned to leave, he paused. "Do you think there's any chance for us, now that you've found yourself?" I met his eyes, Mark. I didn't find myself so I could lose me again. I closed the door, gently. They called it an overnight success, but they didn't see the nights. I cried in the laundry room so Mark wouldn't hear. Or the mornings. I painted a smile just to get through a day of feeling invisible. No. They only saw the billboard, the magazine cover, the collection called Scarred and Stunning. They didn't see the scars, only the shine. The launch event was held in an upscale gallery downtown, exposed brick. Hanging lights, silk-draped mannequins wearing my work. I stood in the center of it all, wearing the first scarf I ever designed. The one Amira had pulled out of my bag that day, like it was gold. A woman approached me, phone in hand. "You're Clara, right? I just wanted to say, your story gave me courage. I left a man who told me I was too much last year. Seeing you up there, She looked toward the billboard projected on the gallery wall, made me feel like maybe being too much just means I'm exactly enough." We hugged. She cried. I did too. Throughout the night, more came, women, men, strangers, survivors, each one carrying a piece of their own story, handing it to me like I had space to hold it, and surprisingly, I did buy, because when you heal, you grow room for others. At the end of the event, Amira took the mic. She stood beside me in her fierce red suit and said, Tonight isn't just about scarves or fashion. It's about resurrection, about the quiet women who rediscover. There, roar. The room cheered. She handed me the mic. My hands trembled. But my voice didn't. I looked around and said, there was a time I believed it was only worth as much as someone's approval. That being a good wife meant being a quiet one. But silence isn't love, and shrinking isn't sacrifice. I named this collection Scarred and Stunning because I'm both, and so are you. Every stitch in these pieces carries a story. Every scar holds beauty. There were tears, applause, camera flashes, but none of that mattered. What mattered was the feeling of being seen. Not for who I used to be, but for who I chose to become. Later that night, I stood in the hallway, barefoot. Watching my reflection in the darkened glass of the gallery doors, I looked taller. Not in height, in presence. Behind me, Amira approached. You know, they're already asking about your next collection. I laughed. Already? She nodded. The industry likes shiny things. But you're not just shiny. You're solid. We clinked glasses to scars. I said, too stunning. She smiled. 2 weeks later, I was on the cover of a local magazine, not Vogue, not Elle, but something even better. Real Women Weekly. The headline read, She Stitched Her Pain into Power. Inside the article, they quoted me. I didn't escape a loveless marriage. I redesigned myself. I framed that cover, hung it by my new front door, because every time I stepped out, I wanted to remember this version of me was built. Not born, but not everything was perfect. There were critics, online trolls calling me a divorce-obsessed midlife crisis in lipstick. Some anonymous account posted, scarves won't save your marriage. And maybe they were right, but I didn't need saving anymore. I'd stopped waiting for rescue the moment. I started creating. One night, I received a package. No note, just a framed photo. It was me sitting at the event, mid-laugh, scarf glowing. In the soft lights on the back, scribbled in permanent marker. She remembered who she was. And the world had no choice but to adjust. No signature, but I recognized the handwriting. It was from Mark. I didn't call him. I didn't need to. Because that photo, it wasn't his way of winning me back. It was his quiet surrender. His realization that the woman he once underestimated had become untouchable. Months passed, the second collection came. Then the third. And with every release, shed more of the old Clara. The one who waited apologized. Begged. I found myself traveling, speaking, leading workshops on storytelling, through design. They even asked me to mentor new voices, women, fresh out of breakups, breakdowns, and self-doubt. I always told them, you are not starting over, you're starting forward. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, I'd revisit old journals. One entry read, if I disappeared, would anyone? Notice I smiled, because now, if I disappeared, the whole city would notice, and not because of fame, not because of scarves, but because of impact. Because somewhere, a woman might walk a little taller wearing something I created. Because someone, somewhere, whispered to herself in the mirror, if she did it, maybe I can too. I'm not the woman I used to be. I'm not trying to be anyone's idea of wife material. I'm woman material. Whole. Scarred. Stunning. And finally, free. It was raining that afternoon. The kind of soft, gentle rain that feels like a whisper rather than a storm. I had just finished a radio interview about my new charity line, Woven Words, a collection made in collaboration with women, rebuilding their lives after divorce, abandonment, or abuse. As I stepped out of the station, umbrella in hand, my driver asked, do you want to head straight to the apartment, Miss Clara? But I shook my head. Take me downtown, I said. The Billboard. I hadn't visited it in weeks. Life had swept me into a current of meetings, designs, interviews, and healing. But that image, that version of me, staring proudly down at the world, still meant everything. We pulled up to the intersection. There it was, gleaming even in the rain. My billboard, my name, my design. Scarred and stunning, she didn't just wear power. She wove it. But this time, he was there, Mark. Standing below the sign. Alone. Umbrella. Less. Soaked. Still for a second. I didn't move. I watched him from behind the window, shielded by tinted glass, and time. His head was tilted up, looking at the image of the woman he once told wasn't wife material. I wondered what he saw. A stranger? A regret? A mirror? I stepped out of the car. Raindrops kissed my skin. I didn't open the umbrella. Somehow I needed to feel this. Fully, he turned slowly when he heard the door shut. Our eyes met for the first time in what felt like a lifetime. He smiled faintly, unsure, almost embarrassed. I stayed still. "Hi," he said. "Didn't expect you." "I didn't expect you either," I replied. He nodded toward the billboard. "I come here sometimes." I raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "To remember," he said softly. We stood in silence. The world kept moving around us. Honking cars, rushed footsteps, city noise, but it felt like we were frozen in the center of it all. Then he said, "I didn't know how small I made you feel." "You didn't need to." I replied, "I lived in that smallness every day." He looked down, ashamed. "And now?" He looked up again at the billboard, then back at me. "You're everywhere." I tilted my head. "Not everywhere. It's just where I'm supposed to be." He sighed. "I guess I didn't see you clearly." "No," I said. "You saw what you wanted me to be, not who I was." "And now?" he asked. I smiled. Not cruelly, not smugly. Just at peace. "Now I see myself. And I don't need you to." He hesitated, then stepped closer. "I know it's probably too late, but it is," I interrupted. Gently. His face fell. "I don't hate you, Mark." I added, "I don't even resent you anymore." "Miss you," he whispered. "I miss who I thought you were," I replied. But not the man who stood beside me while I withered. A pause. Then I said something that surprised even me. "Thank you." He blinked. "For what?" "For leaving me no choice but to choose myself." He didn't speak, and I didn't fill the silence, because some moments are meant to stay sacred. We stood there for a little longer, two people in the rain, beneath a version of me that no longer needed validation. Then, slowly, I turned, walked back to the car as the door closed behind me. I looked once more through the window. Mark was still there, still staring up, but I wasn't looking at him anymore. I was looking at her, the woman on the billboard, the woman I fought to become, and I whispered, "Just for her, you made it." Back at the apartment, Amira called. "You all right?" she asked. "I saw him." I said. She was quiet for a beat. "How did that feel?" "Like finishing a sentence I started years ago," I said. "With a period, not a question mark?" I walked into my closet and ran my hand across the newest samples for the next launch. This one would be called The Quiet Revolution, because that's what my healing was. It's not loud or dramatic, just real, persistent, unapologetic. A week later, a package arrived. No return label. Inside was a single envelope and a silk scarf, one of the first ones I ever made. The note read, "You were never not enough. I was just never ready to meet someone like you. I hope you keep rising, Em." I folded the letter. I didn't cry. Instead, I placed the scarf in a glass frame beside my desk, not as a keepsake of love, but of growth, because even pain can be repurposed. Even endings can become foundations. Some nights, I still visit the billboard, but not to gloat, not even to reminisce, just to remind myself. They said I wasn't wife material. But I wasn't made to be kept. I was made to create, to lead, to live. And now I do. Every single day.